I uninvited my bully brother from my graduation. My parents are fuming. Nina is currently shrieking in the kitchen. It's this high-pitched screech that vibrates right through the floorboards of my bedroom. Ray is pacing the hallway outside my door like a trapped animal. They're acting like I just committed a felony. But all I did was tell the truth. I'm 19 years old. For the first time in my life, I've set a boundary that they can't simply ignore or talk over. Zane is 21. He spent the better part of a decade making my life a living nightmare. He's sitting on the stairs right now. I can see his shadow stretching under my doorframe. He's tapping his foot against the wood. It's a rhythmic thudding that he knows annoys me. I know he's wearing that smug, self-satisfied look that makes my skin crawl. He hasn't said a word yet because he knows he doesn't have to. He knows mom and dad are doing his dirty work for him. He thinks he's untouchable. He thinks this because our parents have spent years shielding him from the consequences of his own cruelty. But the graduation ceremony is in exactly 48 hours. I've already called the registrar. I spoke to the administration this morning. I told them I had a safety concern. I gave them his full name and description. They took it seriously. His name isn't on the list. His ticket's been voided. Nina just slammed a glass on the counter. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. She keeps screaming that we're a family. She says that families don't exclude each other from milestones. She conveniently forgets the time Zane intentionally broke my arm when I was 12. He told everyone I fell off the swing set, and she believed him over me. She forgets the time he stole my college savings to buy a designer watch. She told me I was being dramatic for crying about it. Ray isn't any better. He just keeps muttering about how I'm tearing the family apart. It's as if Zane hasn't been slowly dismantling my self-esteem since I was in kindergarten. They see a golden boy who made a few mistakes. I see a monster who learned early on that he could hurt me without repercussion. I'm standing in the middle of my room. I'm staring at my graduation gown hanging on the door. I feel a strange sense of calm. The storm's raging outside my door, but for the first time, I'm not the one getting soaked. I'm the one holding the umbrella. I'm not letting him under it. This day belongs to me, Lisa. It doesn't belong to the boy who tried to break me for 24 months straight. Growing up with Zane was like living in a house with a ghost that only wants to haunt you, but acts like a friendly spirit whenever the lights are on. To the rest of the world, and especially to Nina and Ray, he was the golden child. He was the varsity athlete with the winning smile. The guy who held doors open for old ladies at the grocery store and charmed the neighbors into thinking our family was picture perfect. But the second the front door closed and the audience was gone, the mask dropped. I saw the person underneath, and it was terrifying. It wasn't just sibling rivalry. Rivalry implies that we were competing for something. We weren't. I was just trying to survive him. He started young. I think he realized early on that I was an easy target because I was sensitive, and I looked up to him. When I was 7 and he was 9, it was small things. He would hide my favorite stuffed animals in the trash compactor or tell me that the noises in the attic were monsters coming to eat specifically me because I hadn't cleaned my room. I would run to Nina, sobbing, and she would just laugh it off. She would ruffle his hair and say, "Oh, Zane, stop teasing your sister," with this affectionate tone that basically gave him permission to keep doing it. He learned that making me cry didn't get him in trouble. It got him attention. It got him a laugh. The physical stuff started when we hit pre-teens. The incident that I still feel in my bones, literally, happened when I was 12. We were in the backyard on the old swing set Ray had built. I was swinging high, trying to see over the fence, and Zane was standing behind me. He wasn't pushing me, he was just watching. I remember feeling a sudden, violent shove against my lower back right at the apex of the swing. It wasn't a playful push, it was a launch. I flew off the seat and landed hard on my left arm. I heard the snap before I felt the pain. It was a sickening, wet crunch that instantly made me nauseous. I started screaming, clutching my arm, which was bent at a horrifying angle. Zane didn't run to help me. He ran inside screaming for mom, acting like he was the one in distress. By the time Nina got outside, Zane was hyperventilating, crying crocodile tears about how I had been swinging too high and lost my grip. He spun this narrative in seconds, painting me as the reckless idiot and himself as the traumatized witness. On the ride to the emergency room, I was in the back seat, white as a sheet from the pain, while Nina sat in the passenger seat reaching back to hold Zane's hand. She was comforting him. She kept saying, "It's okay, honey. It was an accident. Don't look at it." Ray was driving, lecturing me about being more careful and how much the deductible was going to cost. I sat there with a broken bone, realizing that even when I was the victim, Zane was the one getting the sympathy. That cast was on my arm for 6 weeks, and every time Zane looked at it, he would just smirk. He signed it, "Watch your step." Everyone thought it was a cute brotherly warning. I knew it was a threat. As we got older, the physical bullying became too risky. He couldn't push me off swings anymore without people asking questions. So he evolved. He moved into psychological warfare, which is honestly so much worse because bruises heal, but the things he said to me wired my brain to hate myself. He targeted my deepest insecurities with the precision of a surgeon. In middle school, I was a little chubby and struggling with math. He weaponized it. He would leave notes in my lunchbox that said things like, "Piggy needs a diet," or "Don't choke." When I would throw them away, he would fish them out and put them back on my pillow. If I tried to tell Ray, he would say, "You need to learn to take a joke, Lisa. Boys will be boys." The theft started in high school. I was working my butt off babysitting for the neighbors and walking dogs all summer to save up for a laptop. I had a mason jar hidden in the back of my closet, tucked inside a pair of winter boots. I had almost $400 in there, mostly in ones and fives. One day I came home from school and went to add a 20 I had made from mowing a lawn. The jar was empty, not just a little light, it was completely cleaned out. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. I ran downstairs and found Zane in the living room, unboxing a brand new gaming headset and wearing a flashy new watch. I exploded. I started screaming that he stole my money. Nina came running in, but instead of asking Zane where he got the cash for his new toys, she turned on me. She asked me if I had misplaced it. She asked if I had spent it and forgotten. I was hysterical, pointing at the watch on his wrist and screaming that it was my dog walking money. Zane looked at her calm as a cucumber and said, "Mom, I've been saving my allowance for months. Lisa is just jealous because she's broke." And she believed him. Or maybe she didn't believe him, but it was easier to pretend she did than to admit her son was a thief. Ray told me to stop making accusations without proof and sent me to my room for disrespecting the family peace. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, listening to Zane laughing at his video games through the wall, using the headset my sweat and labor had paid for. That was the turning point where I stopped trying to get justice and started trying to become invisible. I realized that any reaction I gave him was fuel. If I cried, he won. If I yelled, he won. If I told our parents, he definitely won. So I tried to become a gray rock. Uninteresting, unresponsive. But Zane hated that even more. He hated not getting a rise out of me. My 16th birthday was the final nail in the coffin of my childhood hope. I didn't want a big party, I just wanted Jess and Sarah to come over, order some pizzas, and watch scary movies in the living room. I had asked Nina specifically to keep Zane away, just for one night. She promised she would ask him to go to a friend's house. Of course, she didn't enforce it. About an hour into our movie marathon, Zane came home with 4 of his loudest, most obnoxious football friends. They stormed into the living room, changing the channel, eating our pizza, and making crude comments about me and my friends. When I asked them to leave, Zane laughed in my face. He said, "This is my house too, loser. Why don't you go play in traffic?" His friends laughed like it was the funniest thing they had ever heard. I looked at Nina, who was in the kitchen. She just avoided eye contact and wiped the counter, pretending she couldn't hear her daughter being humiliated in her own home. She didn't want to embarrass Zane in front of his friends. So I spent my sweet 16 in the garage, sitting on a stack of old tires with Jess and Sarah, crying while we listened to them destroy the living room. That night, sitting in the smell of gasoline and dust, I made a silent vow. I promised myself that I would get out. I promised myself that I would never let them make me feel this small again. I stopped expecting them to protect me. I started building a wall around myself, brick by brick. I started hiding my money in a bank account they didn't know about. I started studying at the library instead of home. I was preparing for war, even if they didn't know it yet. The ghost of my childhood was about to meet the woman I was becoming, and he wasn't going to like her. This graduation uninvite, it wasn't a sudden decision. It was 10 years of receipts coming due all at once. The shift from middle school to high school changed everything. If childhood was him physically pushing me around, high school was him trying to mentally dismantle my future. Zane had graduated by the time I was a sophomore, but he didn't leave. He lingered. He went to a local community college for a semester, dropped out because the professors were out to get him, and then moved back into his old room like he had never left. He was stuck, stagnant, and angry at the world. And there I was, the little sister who was getting straight A's, joining clubs, and actually building a life. He hated it. He hated that I had a trajectory when he had a dead end. My success became a mirror for his failure, and he decided to smash the mirror. The sabotage was subtle at first, then blatant. He knew my grades were my ticket out of that house. I was obsessive about them because I knew I needed a scholarship to get far enough away where his voice couldn't reach me. Zane figured this out. During my junior year finals week, the internet suddenly became his favorite weapon. I would be in the middle of a timed online quiz or submitting a massive research paper at 11 at night, and the Wi-Fi would just vanish. The first time I thought it was a glitch. The second time, I walked out to the hallway and saw him by the router, unplugging the modem with a smirk on his face. When I screamed at him to plug it back in, he would just dangle the cord and say, "Oops, I tripped. My bad." By the time it rebooted, my submission window would be closed. I tried to tell Ray. I told him Zane was intentionally sabotaging my schoolwork. Ray just sighed, looking at his TV, and said, "Lisa, the internet is spotty in this house. Stop blaming your brother for bad infrastructure." It wasn't bad infrastructure, it was a bad son. But Ray would rather believe in a faulty router than a faulty family dynamic. So I learned to adapt. I stopped trusting the home network. I started staying at the public library until closing time every single night. I would sit in the back corner near the biography section and do my homework in peace. The librarians knew me by name. They were more family to me than the people I lived with. They protected my silence in a way Nina and Ray never did, but Zane didn't like that I had found a sanctuary. If he couldn't get to me academically, he went for my social life. He realized that isolating me was the best way to keep me weak. When I finally started dating in my junior year, Zane made it his mission to humiliate me. I brought a guy, Mike, to the house once. Just once. We were sitting on the front porch, just talking, waiting for Mike's mom to pick him up. Zane came out with a trash bag, dumped it in the bin near us, and then stood there, staring Mike down. He started making these jokes about me. He told Mike, "Good luck with this one. She's got a lot of issues. You know she still wets the bed when she's stressed." It was a lie. A mortifying, childish, disgusting lie. But the way he said it, with this casual bro-to-bro confidence, made Mike uncomfortable. Mike laughed nervously, looked at me, and I could see the attraction dying in his eyes. I was so humiliated I couldn't even speak. I just froze. Zane patted Mike on the shoulder and went back inside, leaving me sitting there in the wreckage of my dignity. Mike never texted me back. I didn't blame him. Who wants to date the girl with the psycho older brother? After that, I stopped inviting people over. I stopped talking about my friends. I compartmentalized my life completely. There was school Lisa, who was fun and smart, and home Lisa, who was a mute ghost trying to avoid detection. The worst part was the gaslighting from Nina. She witnessed some of this. She saw how I flinched when he walked into a room. She saw how I stopped eating dinner with them because Zane would spend the whole meal criticizing the way I chewed or the way I looked. But she rewrote reality in real time. She would say things like, "Zane is just going through a hard time. He needs our support right now." Support meant letting him do whatever he wanted. If I complained, I was kicking him while he was down. I remember one specific night when I was working on a diorama for a history project. It had taken me 3 weeks. It was sitting on the dining room table, drying. Zane walked by with a basketball, spinning it on his finger. I told him to be careful. He looked me dead in the eye, feigned a slip, and the ball smashed right into the center of my project, crushing the balsa wood and papier-mâché. I stood there staring at 3 weeks of work destroyed in 3 seconds. Zane didn't even pretend to be sorry. He just said, "Shouldn't have put it in a high-traffic area, genius." Nina came in, saw the destruction, saw me crying, and her first instinct was to defend him. "It was an accident, Lisa. He didn't mean to. You can fix it. Don't make him feel bad. He's just clumsy." I wanted to scream, I wanted to flip the table, but I knew it wouldn't matter. In their court of law, Zane was the judge, jury, and victim. And I was always the defendant. I stayed up until 4 in the morning fixing that project with duct tape and glue, crying silently so I wouldn't wake them up. I got an A-, but I looked at that project and all I could see was the dent where the ball hit. That was when the gray rock method really cemented itself. I read about it online on a forum for people with toxic families. The idea was to become as uninteresting as a rock. No emotion, no reaction, no information. When Zane insulted me, I would just say okay in a flat voice. When he destroyed my things, I would clean it up without a word. When Nina tried to guilt-trip me into being nicer to him, I would just nod and walk away. It drove Zane insane. He would ramp up his cruelty, trying to get a spark, a tear, anything. He would call me ugly, stupid, unlovable. He would blast music against my bedroom wall at 2 in the morning. But I wouldn't bang on the wall. I would just put in earplugs and stare at my textbook. I was saving all my rage for the exit. I treated my time in that house like a prison sentence. I marked the days off on a calendar hidden inside my closet door. Every X was a victory. Every day I didn't engage was a battle won. But suppressing that much anger takes a toll. You can't just swallow poison every day and expect not to get sick. I started getting headaches. My stomach was always in knots. I developed this constant, low-level anxiety that made my hands shake. I was holding it together by a thread, telling myself, just get to graduation, just get to college. I didn't know that Zane could sense the finish line too. He knew I was slipping through his fingers. He knew his punching bag was about to pack up and leave. And that terrified him. Because without me to torment, he would have to look in the mirror and see exactly who he was. And that is why he escalated. That is why he did what he did next. He needed to break me completely before I could escape. He needed to make sure that even if I left, I would carry the scars forever. He was ramping up for his grand finale, and I was walking right into it, thinking I was safe just because I was silent. I was wrong. Silence doesn't protect you from a predator who is hunting for sport. It just makes you harder to find until they decide to burn the whole forest down. The specific incident that changed everything happened 6 months ago. It was a Tuesday night in November. The house was quiet, which was usually a good sign, but that night the silence felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. Nina and Ray were out at a dinner party with some of Ray's work colleagues, leaving me and Zane alone in the house. I had been avoiding him all week, sticking to my gray rock routine, but I made the mistake of going down to the kitchen to get a glass of water. I thought he was in his room, gaming. I was wrong. I was standing by the refrigerator, filling my glass when I felt him behind me. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there blocking the exit. I turned around, water in hand, and saw him leaning against the doorframe. He had this look on his face that I hadn't seen before. It wasn't the usual boredom or annoyance. It was pure malice. He was holding a piece of paper in his hand. It was crumpled, yellowed, and looked like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. My stomach dropped. I knew that paper. I recognized the handwriting even from across the room. It was a note I had written in the 10th grade. It was the darkest year of my life. The bullying had been relentless, my grades had slipped, and I felt completely isolated. One night, in a moment of absolute despair, I had written a letter. It wasn't a diary entry. It was a goodbye note. I never sent it. I never acted on it. I had crumbled it up and thrown it in the trash can in my room 3 years ago. Or at least I thought I did. Zane must have fished it out of the garbage back then and kept it. He had held on to my lowest moment for 3 years, waiting for the perfect time to use it as ammunition. Remember this, Lisa? He asked, waving the paper in front of my face. His voice was low, mocking. I was looking through some old stuff and found this gem. Dear Mom and Dad, I'm sorry I'm such a burden. He started reading it out loud. He put on a whiny, pathetic voice, mimicking me. Hearing my own raw, terrified thoughts from 3 years ago coming out of his mouth was a violation I can't even describe. It felt like he was physically reaching inside my chest and squeezing my heart. I tried to grab it from him, but he was taller and stronger. He held it high above his head, laughing. Aw, don't be shy, Lisa. It's poetic. Morbid, but poetic. Then, his face changed. The smile vanished. He leaned in close. So close, I could smell the stale energy drink on his breath. You think you're better than me because you got into that fancy university? You think you're going to go there and start over? Pretend you're normal? He shook the paper. I think the admissions office would be very interested to know how unstable their new star student is. I think your future roommates would love to see this. Maybe I should post it. Tag the university, #mental health awareness. I froze. The blood drained from my face. He wasn't just teasing me anymore. He was threatening to nuke my future. He knew that a fresh start was the only thing keeping me going. He knew I was terrified of being labeled the crazy girl before I even stepped onto campus. You wouldn't, I whispered. My voice was shaking. Try me, he sneered. You walk around here like you're perfect, looking down on me because I'm still home, but you're broken, Lisa. You've always been broken. The world would be a lot quieter without your whining. Maybe you should have gone through with it. That was the sentence that snapped the tether. Maybe you should have gone through with it. My own brother, standing in our kitchen, telling me I should be dead. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Something inside of me just went cold. It was like a switch flipped in my brain. The fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I looked him dead in the eye. If you post that, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, I will go to the police. I will tell them about the money you stole. I will tell them about the drugs you keep in your gym bag. I will burn your life down, Zane. Try me. He blinked. He stepped back just an inch. He wasn't expecting me to bite back. For a second, I saw fear in his eyes. He laughed it off, shoved the note back in his pocket, and said, You're crazy. No one would believe you. But he retreated. He walked out of the kitchen, leaving me shaking but standing. When Nina and Ray came home an hour later, I made one last attempt. I sat them down in the living room. I didn't tell them about the threat to post it online. I knew they wouldn't understand how damaging that could be, but I told them about the note. I told them Zane had kept a suicide note from 10th grade and used it to taunt me. I told them he said I should have done it. I was shaking, tears streaming down my face, waiting for them to finally be parents, waiting for Ray to stand up and kick him out, waiting for Nina to hug me and scream at her son. Nina sighed. She actually sighed, like I had just told her the milk was expired. Lisa, honey, she said, rubbing her temples. Zane has a dark sense of humor. You know that. He doesn't mean it. He's just jealous of your college acceptance. He's blowing off steam. Blowing off steam? I screamed. He told me I should be dead. Don't be dramatic, Ray snapped. He's your brother. He loves you. You two just need to stop poking each other. I don't want to hear any more about this tonight. We had a long night and I have work in the morning. They got up and went to bed. They left me sitting on the couch, alone. That was the moment. That was the exact second my family died. I looked at the empty hallway where they had disappeared, and I realized I was an orphan with living parents. They had made their choice. They chose the abuser because it was easier than confronting the truth. They traded my safety for their comfort. I went to my room and locked the door. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed, staring at the wall, and I made a plan. I was done crying. I was done begging. If they wanted to pretend everything was fine, I would let them. I would play the part of the dutiful daughter. I would smile. I would keep the peace. And silently, ruthlessly, I would cut them out of my life like a tumor. I pulled out my laptop and opened the university portal. I checked my move-in date. 6 months. I could survive 6 months. I would lie. I would save every penny. And when I walked across that graduation stage, it would be the last time they ever saw me. The girl who wanted their approval died in that kitchen. The woman who wanted revenge was just being born. The morning after the kitchen incident, I woke up with a singular focus that was almost mechanical. The emotional part of me, the sister who wanted a brother, the daughter who wanted parents, was packed away in a box in the back of my mind. In its place was a strategist. I looked at the calendar on my wall. I had roughly 180 days until graduation. 180 days to build an escape pod without anyone noticing the construction. The first step was financial. I had the secret bank account, but it wasn't enough. I needed first month's rent, a security deposit, and enough cash to float me for a few months if I couldn't find a job immediately in my college town. I couldn't pick up more shifts at the bakery where I worked because Nina tracked my hours. She claimed it was because she didn't want my grades to slip, but I knew it was about control. So I got creative. I started a side hustle that was completely digital and untraceable by them. I had always been good at graphic design. I was the one who made all the flyers for the school clubs. I went on freelance sites like Fiverr and Upwork and created a profile. I offered logo design, social media banners, and even essay proofreading. I worked late at night, under my covers with the screen brightness turned all the way down, using a VPN so Zane couldn't snoop on my traffic if he decided to audit the router logs again. The money started trickling in, $50 here, $20 there. It went straight into a PayPal account linked to my secret bank account. I told Nina I was studying extra hard for AP exams to explain why I was always in my room or at the library. She bought it. In fact, she seemed relieved that I was being so quiet. The gray rock method was working perfectly as a cover. I became the model child. I did my chores without being asked. I nodded when Ray lectured me about politics at dinner. I even forced myself to say good morning to Zane, though it tasted like bile in my throat. This was the fake piece. It was the hardest acting role of my life. Zane was suspicious at first. He would poke at me, try to get a rise. One day, he accidentally knocked over a stack of my freshly folded laundry. Oops, he said, waiting for the explosion. I just bent down and started picking it up. It's okay, I said, my voice flat. I'll refold it. He stared at me, confused. He didn't know what to do with a victim who refused to scream. Eventually, he got bored. He started spending more time out of the house with his friends, assuming that he had finally broken me. He thought he had won. He thought I was subdued. He didn't realize I was just biding my time. The logistics of the move were the next hurdle. I couldn't just pack my bags on graduation day. They would notice. I needed to move my life out of that house piece by piece, like a prisoner smuggling dirt out of a tunnel. I recruited Jess and Sarah. They were the only two people on Earth who knew the full truth. We came up with a system. Every time I went to their houses for a study session, my backpack was stuffed not with books, but with my most precious belongings. First, it was the small things: my birth certificate, my social security card, my passport. I slipped them into a folder inside my chemistry textbook and handed it off to Jess in the school parking lot. "Keep this in your safe," I told her. She nodded, her face grim. She knew the stakes. Next came the sentimental items. The photo album from my grandmother, the necklace my aunt gave me, my favorite hoodies. Over the course of 4 months, I slowly hollowed out my room. To keep up appearances, I rearranged my remaining stuff to make the room look full. I spread books out on the shelves. I kept empty shoeboxes in the closet. I left generic clothes in the drawers. If Nina walked in, it looked like the messy room of a normal teenager. But if you looked closely, the soul of the room was gone. It was a stage set. The biggest challenge was the Uninvited itself. I knew I couldn't tell the school yet. If the tickets were mailed to the house, Nina would open them. I had to intercept them. I went to the administration office every day for 2 weeks straight during lunch, asking if the graduation packets were ready. The secretary, Mrs. Gable, was annoyed at first, but I spun a story about how my mail often got stolen and I needed to pick it up personally. When the packet finally arrived in April, I grabbed it before it could go to the outbox. I opened it in the girls' bathroom stall. 4 tickets. Each one had a unique QR code. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. This was the weapon. I took 2 tickets out. One for Nina, one for Ray. I took the other 2 and put them in a separate envelope. Later that day, I gave those 2 tickets to Jess and Sarah. You guys are sitting with my parents, I said. If Zane shows up, you text me. When I got home, I handed the envelope with 2 tickets to Nina. Here you go, Mom. Tickets for you and Dad. She looked at them, then looked up. Where's Zane's? I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. I kept my face perfectly neutral. Oh, the school only gave us 2 guest tickets this year. Budget cuts or fire safety or something, it's super limited. It was a lie, but it was a believable one. Our school auditorium was notoriously small and there had been rumors about ticket limits all year. Nina frowned. That's ridiculous. I'm going to call the school. You can try, I said, shrugging, but everyone is complaining about it. I think there's a lottery for extra tickets later, but it's unlikely. I knew she wouldn't call. Nina hated confrontation with authority figures. She would complain to Ray, she would complain to her friends, but she wouldn't actually pick up the phone and navigate a school phone tree. She accepted the lie. Well, she huffed. That's a shame. Poor Zane. He was really looking forward to it. He wasn't. Zane didn't care about my graduation. He just cared about the free dinner afterwards and the opportunity to make fun of my gown. But now he had an out. He could play the martyr. It's fine, Zane said when he found out sprawling on the couch. I didn't want to go to some boring high school ceremony anyway. Have fun, nerds. I almost smiled. It was working. The trap was set. They thought it was just bad luck. They didn't know it was a calculated excision. The hardest part of those 6 months wasn't the lying. It was the isolation. I was living a double life. At school, I was the excited senior, voting for prom queen and signing yearbooks. At home, I was a sleeper agent in enemy territory. There were nights when I wanted to break, nights when Ray would actually be nice, asking about my day, or Nina would make my favorite dinner. In those moments, the guilt would creep in. Am I being too harsh? I would wonder. They're my parents. Maybe I can fix this. Then I would look at Zane across the table. I would see the smirk. I would remember the note in the kitchen. I would remember the jokes about my suicide. And the guilt would harden back into resolve. They had their chance. They had 19 years of chances. This wasn't punishment. It was survival. By May, I was ready. My bank account had $3,000 in it. My room was empty of anything that mattered. My friends were on standby with a truck rented for graduation day. I felt lighter, like I was shedding a skin. The house felt less like a home and more like a waiting room. I walked through the halls, looking at the family photos on the wall. Pictures where I was smiling. But Zane had his hand digging into my shoulder, or Nina was looking away. I realized I wasn't leaving a family. I was leaving a cult where Zane was the god, and I was the sacrifice. And I was done bleeding for them. The plan was perfect. The lie about the limited tickets had held up for weeks. Zane was indifferent, Nina was annoyed but resigned, and Ray was just happy he didn't have to pay for an extra dinner plate. I thought I was in the clear. I thought I could coast to the finish line without any more drama. I should have known better. In a family like mine, peace is just the eye of the hurricane. The flying monkeys arrived 1 week before graduation. For those who don't know the term, it comes from The Wizard of Oz. The Wicked Witch sends her flying monkeys to do her dirty work. In toxic family dynamics, these are the extended family members who swoop in to guilt trip the victim back into submission on behalf of the abuser. In my case, it was Aunt Linda. Aunt Linda is Nina's sister. She lives 3 towns over, has a live, laugh, love sign in every room of her house, and believes that blood is thicker than anything, including basic human decency. She called on a Tuesday evening while we were all eating dinner. The landline rang. We still had one, mostly for telemarketers and older relatives, and Nina picked it up. Hello? Oh, hi, Linda. Nina's voice went up an octave into her everything is fine phone voice. Yes, we're good. Just getting ready for the big day next week. Uh-huh. Then her face fell. She looked at me, then at Zane. Wait, who told you that? No, well, Lisa said there were only 2 tickets. My stomach dropped. I stopped chewing. I knew exactly what was happening. Nina listened for another minute, her face getting redder. Are you sure? 4? But Lisa told me, okay, I'll handle it. She hung up the phone slowly and turned to me. The room went dead silent. That was your Aunt Linda, Nina said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. Her neighbor's daughter attends the same school. She just got her graduation packet. Do you know how many tickets she got, Lisa? I didn't answer. I just gripped my fork. 4, Nina whispered. She got 4 tickets, and apparently you can request 2 more online. So, why did you lie to me? The air left the room. Zane looked up from his plate, his eyes lighting up. He smelled blood. Ooh, he said. Busted. I had two choices. I could lie again, maybe say I lost them, or I could finally drop the bomb. I looked at Ray, who was staring at me with confusion. I looked at Nina, who looked like I'd slapped her, and I looked at Zane, who was grinning. I didn't lose them, I said. My voice was quiet, but steady. I gave them away. You what? Ray boomed. I gave the other 2 tickets to Jess and Sarah, I said. Zane isn't invited. The explosion was immediate. Nina stood up so fast her chair knocked over. How dare you? She screamed. How dare you give away your brother's ticket? He is family. You do not exclude family. He's not family, I shot back, standing up too. Family doesn't tell you to kill yourself. Family doesn't steal your money. I don't want him there. Oh my God, you are still on about that note? Zane laughed, shaking his head. Mom, she's psychotic. She's holding a grudge over a joke. It wasn't a joke, I yelled, losing my cool for the first time in months. You threatened to ruin my life. I don't want you near me on my graduation day. I want one day where I don't have to be afraid of you. Afraid? Ray scoffed. Lisa, stop being so dramatic. Your brother loves you. This is pure spite. You are doing this to hurt us. I am doing this to protect myself. You will get those tickets back, Nina ordered, pointing a finger at my face. You will call your friends right now and tell them it was a mistake. Zane is going. End of discussion. No, I said. The word hung in the air. I had never said no to a direct order like that, not since I was a toddler. Excuse me, Nina whispered. No, I repeated, feeling stronger with every syllable. I won't call them. The tickets are in their names. It's done. If you try to force him to come, I won't walk. I'll skip the ceremony. I don't care. That was the start of the siege. For the next 5 days, my phone was a war zone. Nina must have called every relative we had. My phone blew up with texts from cousins I hadn't seen in years, from my grandmother, from random uncles. Lisa, be the bigger person. Your mother is heartbroken. Don't tear this family apart over a ticket. Zane made a mistake, but forgiveness is divine. Think about how this looks to the neighbors. That was the common thread. Not one of them asked why I uninvited him. Not one of them asked if I was okay. They only cared about the optics. They cared about the family photo looking complete. They didn't care that the girl in the photo was dying inside. Then came the bribes. Ray came into my room on Thursday night. He sat on the edge of my bed playing the good cop. Look, honey, he said softly. I know Zane can be difficult, but this means a lot to your mother. If you get that ticket back, I'll pay for your first semester of books, all of them, and I'll give you $500 cash for your dorm room. He was trying to buy my safety. He was putting a price tag on my dignity. $500. That was what my peace of mind was worth to him. I don't want your money, I said, looking at my laptop. I want a graduation without him. Ray's face hardened. The mask slipped. You are a selfish, ungrateful little brat, he spat. After everything we've done for you, we put a roof over your head, we fed you, and this is how you repay us? By embarrassing us? If Zane is so great, why is he embarrassing you? I asked. Why is his absence shameful? If he was a good brother, he would understand, but he's not, and you know it. He stormed out. The house became a hostile environment. They stopped cooking for me. They stopped speaking to me. Zane would just walk by my room and whistle or kick the door as he passed. He loved it. He loved that the whole house was revolving around him again. He was the center of the universe, the victim of his cruel sister. I barricaded myself in my room. I moved the dresser in front of the door at night because I didn't trust them not to come in and try to find the tickets, which were safely at Jess's house. I ate granola bars I had stashed in my desk. I drank tap water from the bathroom sink. I felt like a fugitive in the house I grew up in. But strangely, the pressure didn't break me. It crystallized me. Every guilt-tripping text, every slam of a door, every nasty look just confirmed that I was doing the right thing. If they truly loved me, they would have asked why I was in so much pain. Instead, they just wanted me to shut up and get back in line. They wanted the prop back on the stage, but I had cut the strings. The flying monkeys could screech all they wanted. I wasn't coming back to Oz. I was going home. To a home I was going to build for myself, far away away from the Wicked Witch and her favorite monkey. The night before graduation was the longest night of my life. It was a siege in the truest sense of the word. The atmosphere in the house was so thick with tension, you could practically taste the sulfur. I had spent the entire day in my room, terrified to leave even for the bathroom. I could hear them downstairs, Nina pacing, Ray grumbling, and Zane. Zane was just laughing. That was the worst part. He was watching TV loudly like it was any other Tuesday. He knew he was the chaos agent, and he was reveling in it. Around 6 p.m., Nina knocked on my door. It wasn't a polite knock, it was a demand. "Lisa, open up. I brought you dinner." I hesitated. I was starving. My stash of granola bars had run out that morning, but my paranoia was at an all-time high. Would she tamper with it? Would she spit in it? Or worse, was it a Trojan horse to get the door open so Zane could barge in? I decided to risk it, but I kept the chain lock on. I had installed a slide bolt months ago, claiming I needed privacy to study, but really it was for nights like this. I cracked the door open an inch. Nina was standing there with a plate of spaghetti. Her eyes were red and puffy. "Please, Lisa," she said, her voice trembling. "Just eat something. We need to talk." "I'll take the food," I said through the crack, "but I'm not talking." "Why are you doing this?" she whispered, pushing the plate through the gap. "Why do you hate us so much?" "I don't hate you," I said, taking the plate. "I hate how you let him treat me. And I hate that you're asking me that question instead of asking him why he threatened to ruin my life." She flinched. "He's your brother. Brothers tease. Telling someone to kill themselves isn't teasing, Mom. It's abuse." I shut the door and locked it. I looked at the spaghetti. It smelled good, but my stomach turned. I took one bite and couldn't swallow it. I flushed it down the toilet just to be safe. I drank water from the bathroom, tap, and sat on my bed, staring at my graduation gown hanging on the closet door. It looked like a ghost in the dim light. At 8 p.m., the real assault began. Zane started pounding on my door. "Hey, valedictorian!" he shouted, his voice slurring slightly. He had been drinking. "Come out here! Mom's crying! Are you happy? You made Mom cry!" Bam, bam, bam. The door shook in its frame. "Go away, Zane," I yelled back, clutching my phone. I had 911 dialed, my thumb hovering over the call button. "You think you're so special," he screamed. "You think you're better than us because you're leaving? You're nothing. You're just a stuck-up little brat. Open the door. I just want to talk." He kicked the door. A picture frame fell off my wall and shattered. "Zane, stop," I heard Nina yell from the hallway. "Leave her alone. No, she needs to learn some respect." He threw his shoulder against the door. The wood groaned. I scrambled off the bed and pushed my heavy oak dresser in front of the door. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was it. He was going to break in. He was going to hurt me before I could leave. "If you come in here," I screamed, my voice shrill with terror, "I am calling the police. I swear to God, Zane, I will have you arrested." Silence. Heavy, panting silence on the other side. "Do it," he hissed. "Call them. See what happens." "Zane, come downstairs," Ray's voice boomed. Finally. "Now, get away from that door." I heard footsteps retreating, then arguing downstairs. Ray was yelling, Zane was yelling, Nina was sobbing. It sounded like an asylum. I sat on the floor with my back against the dresser, shaking. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't sleep here. If I fell asleep, who knew what he would do? He could pick the lock. He could start a fire. He was unstable, and he was angry. I looked at my window. I was on the second floor, but there was a sturdy trellis with wisteria vines growing right next to my sill. I had climbed down it once when I was 14 to sneak out to a party. Could I do it now? I looked at my phone. 9:30 p.m. I texted Jess. "SOS. It's bad. Zane is trying to break my door down. Can I come over?" 3 dots appeared instantly. "Yes. OMG, are you okay? I'm coming to get you. Be outside in 10. I didn't pack a bag. I had already moved my essentials to Jess's house weeks ago. All I needed was my gown, my cap, and the shoes I was going to wear. I put the gown on a hanger, hooked it over my arm, and grabbed my backpack. I opened the window. The night air was cool. I threw the backpack down first. It landed with a soft thud in the grass. Then I climbed out. The trellis was older than I remembered, and it creaked ominously under my weight. I froze, waiting for someone to hear, but the yelling downstairs was still loud enough to cover the noise. I moved slowly, finding footholds in the vines. When my feet hit the grass, I almost collapsed with relief. I grabbed my bag and sprinted to the corner of the street, hiding behind a neighbor's hedge. 5 minutes later, Jess's beat-up Honda Civic rolled up, headlights off. I jumped in the passenger seat. "Go," I said, breathless. "Just go." As we drove away, I looked back at the house. The lights were on downstairs. I could see shadows moving in the living room. They were still fighting. They didn't even know I was gone. They were trapped in their own cycle of misery, and for the first time in 19 years, I wasn't in the center of it. I was outside. I was moving at 30 miles per hour away from the blast radius. We got to Jess's house, and her mom, Mrs. Miller, was waiting with hot cocoa and a blanket. She didn't ask questions. She just hugged me. "You're safe here, honey," she said. "Sleep as long as you need." I slept in Jess's guest room, but I barely slept. I kept waking up thinking I heard Zane pounding on the door. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. But then I would remember where I was. I was in a house where people were kind. I was in a house where family meant safety, not obligation. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of texts from Nina. "Where are you? Your door is locked. Are you in there? Lisa, answer me. We are leaving in an hour. Stop playing games." I didn't answer until I was fully dressed in my cap and gown, looking at myself in Jess's mirror. I looked tired, but I looked fierce. I typed one message. "I am safe. I stayed at a friend's house because I didn't feel safe at home. I will see you at the ceremony. Do not bring Zane. If he comes, security knows his face." I hit send. Then I turned off my phone. I wasn't Lisa the victim anymore. I was Lisa the graduate, and I had a stage to walk across. The drive to the stadium was the first time in my life I felt like I was actually breathing oxygen instead of walking on eggshells. Jess was driving, blasting a playlist of 2000s pop punk that we used to scream along to in her basement, and Sarah was in the back seat, fixing my cap. The sun was shining, the sky was that aggressive, perfect shade of blue. And for a few minutes, I forgot that I was essentially an orphan. I forgot about the suicide note, the stolen money, and the text messages that were still piling up on my silenced phone. I was just a girl graduating high school, surrounded by people who actually liked me. We pulled into the stadium lot around 9. It was a sea of cars and families. Everyone looked so happy. Dads were adjusting ties, moms were holding bouquets of flowers that cost way too much, and graduates were grouping up for selfies. It was the picture-perfect American dream, and I was about to walk into it knowing my reality was a nightmare. My anxiety spiked as we got closer to the entrance. I scanned the crowd, looking for them. I knew they would be here. Nina wouldn't miss the photo op, even if she hated the subject of the photo. I saw them near Gate B. They stood out because they were the only ones not smiling. Nina was wearing a floral dress that looked too cheerful for the expression on her face, which was a mix of fury and panic. Ray was standing next to her, checking his watch aggressively. And then, my heart stopped. Standing about 10 feet away from them, arguing with a security guard, was Zane. He had come. Of course he had come. He was wearing a suit that looked like he had pulled it out of a hamper, wrinkled, ill-fitting, with a tie that was too short. He looked chaotic. He looked like a storm cloud in a field of sunshine. I froze. Jess grabbed my hand. "He's not getting in," she whispered. "Look." We stopped and watched from behind a group of parents. Zane was getting animated. I could see him pointing at the gate, then pointing back at Nina. The security guard, a massive guy who looked like he ate bricks for breakfast, was shaking his head calmly. He was holding a scanner. Zane pulled out his phone, probably trying to show a screenshot of a ticket, or maybe just trying to intimidate the guy. The guard didn't budge. He pointed to the digital reader. No scan, no entry. Nina rushed over, grabbing Ray's arm. I could see her pleading with the guard. She was doing her nice suburban mom routine, probably saying something like, "Oh, there must be a mistake. He's her brother. Surely we can work this out." The guard wasn't having it. He said something back, crossed his arms, and tapped his earpiece. That was the signal. He was calling for backup. Zane lost it. I saw the exact moment his entitlement hit the wall of reality. He threw his hands up and shoved the metal barricade. It made a loud clanging sound that made people turn and stare. "This is Bulls," I heard him scream. "My sister is in there. I have a right to be there." People were pulling their kids away from him. The golden boy was finally showing the world what I had seen for 10 years. He wasn't the charming athlete anymore. He was a grown man throwing a tantrum because he couldn't bully his way past a turnstile. 2 more guards appeared, flanking him. One of them put a hand on Zane's chest. Zane slapped it away. That was a mistake. They grabbed him by the arms, not gently, and started marching him away from the gate. Ray looked like he was about to step in. He took a step toward the guards, his face red. I stepped out from behind the crowd. I didn't say anything. I just stood there in my gown, holding my cap, and stared at him. Ray locked eyes with me. He froze. He looked at Zane, who was being dragged away, kicking and screaming obscenities, and then he looked back at me. I held his gaze. My look said everything I couldn't say. Go ahead, choose him, help him, and watch me walk away forever. Ray hesitated. He looked at Nina, who was sobbing into her hands, humiliated. Then, slowly, painfully, Ray stepped back. He let them take Zane. He chose the path of least resistance, which in this case meant abandoning his son to save face. He put a hand on Nina's shoulder and guided her toward the gate. They scanned their tickets, the 2 tickets I had given them, and walked in. They looked defeated. They looked old. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding since 10th grade. "He's gone," I whispered. "He's gone," Jess confirmed, squeezing my hand. "Now, let's go get that diploma." The ceremony itself was a blur of noise and color. I sat in the front row with the other honor students. I listened to the speeches about the future and limitless potential, and for the first time, those cliches didn't feel like lies. They felt like promises. I scanned the bleachers once. I saw Nina and Ray sitting high up in the stands. They weren't talking to each other. They were sitting with a gap between them, staring blankly at the field. They looked like strangers. I realized then that Zane was the glue that held their dysfunction together. Without him there to create chaos, they had nothing to focus on but their own failure. When the principal called my name, the sound rang out clear as a bell. "Lisa Marie!" I stood up. My legs felt strong. I walked across the stage, and the lights were blinding. I heard Jess and Sarah screaming my name from the student section, a feral, joyful shrieking that made me grin. I didn't look at the parents section. I didn't wave to mom and dad. I walked to the center, shook the principal's hand, and took the diploma. The leather folder felt heavy in my hand. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was my exit visa. It was the receipt for every late night studying in the library, every dollar saved, every insult swallowed. I had bought my freedom, and this was the deed. I walked off the stage, and the flashbulbs popped. I smiled for the official photo, a real, genuine smile that reached my eyes. I kept walking. I didn't go back to my seat. I signaled Jess and Sarah. We had planned this. We weren't staying for the cap toss. We weren't staying for the alma mater song. We were leaving. We slipped out the side exit while the names from the M section were still being called. The parking lot was empty and quiet. The sun was beating down on the asphalt. We ran to Jess's truck, giggling like little kids. It felt illicit, running away from my own graduation, but it also felt right. I threw my gown into the back seat. I took off the cap and tossed it on the dashboard. "Did you see his face?" Sarah asked, breathless from running. "Did you see Zane's face when the guard grabbed him?" "I saw it," I said, buckling my seatbelt. It was the best graduation present I could have asked for. My phone buzzed. I looked at it. A text from Ray. "We're at the car. Where are you? We need to talk." I looked at the timestamp. They had left early, too. They were probably hunting for me, trying to corner me before I could disappear. They probably wanted to drag me to the police station to bail Zane out, or drag me home to scream at me for humiliating them. I typed back one sentence, "I'm not coming home." Then I blocked the number. I blocked Nina. I blocked the house landline. I threw the phone into the cup holder. "Drive," I told Jess. She revved the engine and we peeled out of the lot, leaving the stadium, the parents, and the brother in the rearview mirror. I watched the school get smaller and smaller until it was just a speck on the horizon. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but the tears didn't come. I just felt light. I felt like I was floating. I was homeless, technically. I had no family, technically. But as we merged onto the highway, heading toward the city and my new life, I knew I had never been more found. The bully was in the past. The victim was in the past. The only person in the car was the survivor, and she had a full tank of gas and an open road. The first hour of freedom felt less like a celebration and more like a heist movie. We drove for 40 minutes straight without really saying much, just putting distance between me and the zip code that had suffocated me for 19 years. Jess drove us to a diner 3 towns over, a place with sticky tables and waitresses who called everyone honey. It was neutral territory. We sat in a booth, ordered milkshakes and fries, and I finally let my shoulders drop. I checked my phone one last time before committing to the blackout. The notifications were a wall of text. Nina had left 4 voicemails. Ray had sent a string of texts ranging from "pick up the phone" to "you are making a huge mistake." There was even a text from a number I didn't recognize, which I assumed was Zane using a friend's phone since I had blocked him. It just said, "You're dead to us." I stared at those words, "You're dead to us." It was meant to be a threat, a final nail in the coffin of my belonging. But honestly, it felt like permission. If I was dead to them, then I didn't have to explain myself anymore. I didn't have to justify my choices. Dead people don't pay rent, and they certainly don't attend forced family dinners. I took a screenshot of it. Not to keep as a wound, but as evidence. If I ever felt guilty, if I ever wondered if I was the bad guy, I would look at that text. "You're dead to us," because I wouldn't let an abuser attend a party. "Delete it," Jess said, watching me. "No," I said, locking the phone. "I'm keeping it. It's my diploma from the University of Toxic Families." We finished our fries and went to the truck rental place. I had reserved a small U-Haul under Sarah's name weeks ago, paying for it with my freelance money. We drove it to Jess's house, where my life was currently packed into cardboard boxes in her garage. Loading the truck took less than an hour. It's amazing how little you actually own when you spend your whole life trying not to take up space. A few boxes of clothes, my books, my laptop, and the bedding I had bought in secret. That was it. That was the sum total of Lisa. When the last box was loaded, Mrs. Miller came out. She handed me a Tupperware container of cookies and an envelope. "For the road," she said, hugging me tight. "You're a good kid, Lisa. Don't let them tell you otherwise." I opened the envelope in the truck. It was a gas card with $50 on it. I started crying then. I hadn't cried when my brother threatened me or when my parents abandoned me, but a $50 gas card from a friend's mom broke me. It was such a simple, kind act. It was the exact opposite of everything I had grown up with. It reminded me that love isn't about grand gestures or controlling behavior. It's just about making sure someone has enough gas to get where they're going. The drive to my university town was 3 hours. I drove the U-Haul, following Jess in her car. It gave me time to think. I thought about Zane. I wondered where he was. Probably bailing himself out, or maybe Nina and Ray were doing it. I imagined the car ride home for them. The silence, the blame. They would turn on each other now. That's the thing about toxic systems. They need a scapegoat. With me gone, the triangle of dysfunction was broken. Zane would have no one to bully, so he would turn on Nina. Nina would have no one to complain to, so she would nag Ray. They would cannibalize each other. And while that thought was dark, it was also vindicating. I wasn't the cause of the problem. I was just the buffer, and the buffer was gone. I arrived at my new apartment around 4 p.m. It was a tiny studio in a basement, smelling slightly of damp concrete and lemon cleaner. The windows were small, and the view was of a brick wall. But when I unlocked the door and walked in, it felt like a palace. It was mine. The lease had my name on it. The key was in my pocket. No one else had a copy. Unpacking was slow. I put my books on the shelves. I made the bed with my new sheets, plain gray, crisp, and clean. I set up my desk. By 8:00 p.m., the place looked livable. Jess and Sarah stayed to help me order pizza, and we sat on the floor eating out of the box, laughing about the look on the security guard's face. "So, what's the plan now?" Sarah asked, wiping tomato sauce off her chin. "Plan?" I asked. "Yeah, like, are you going to change your number? Are you going to go home for holidays?" I looked around the room. I looked at the boxes. I looked at the peace I felt in my chest. "I'm changing my number tomorrow," I said. "And as for holidays, I think I'm going to start my own traditions. Maybe Friendsgiving, maybe Christmas at the movies, anything but that house." They left around 10. When the door clicked shut behind them, the silence rushed in. But it wasn't the heavy, scary silence of my childhood home. It wasn't the silence of waiting for the other shoe to drop. It was a clean silence. A blank slate. I sat on my bed and opened my laptop. I logged into my bank account. I had enough for 3 months if I was careful. I checked my student portal. Classes started in August. I had a job lined up at a campus coffee shop starting next week. I had a life, a real, actual life that belonged to me. I thought about writing a letter to my parents, a final screw you to explain everything, but then I realized they knew. They knew why I did it. They knew about the bullying, the theft, the note. They just chose to ignore it. Explaining it again would just be inviting them back into my head to argue with me. The most powerful thing I could do was exactly what I had done: disappear. I walked over to the small window and looked up at the slice of night sky I could see. I was 19. I was alone. I was disowned. And I was free. The bully brother was a character in a story I had finished reading. The parents were ghosts of a past I was leaving behind. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the smell of my own apartment. "I uninvited my brother from my graduation," I said out loud to the empty room, testing how it sounded. "And my parents are fuming." I smiled. Let them fume, let them scream, let them burn the house down with their anger. I wasn't there to put out the fire anymore. I turned off the light, crawled into my bed, and for the first time in 10 years, I fell asleep without checking the lock on my door. The nightmare was over. The dream was just beginning.